think that in order to stay in the game, in order to stay on top of your career, you have to have lots of things going at the same time, because they're all going to be at different stages. So the topic actually comes out of what we were just talking about before lunch, and that is the idea of trying new things and taking risks. It applies to, I think, both craft as well as process. And I think it's important as a screenwriter, whether you're new and starting out or whether you've been doing it for 20 years, to continually look for ways to improve your process, to improve your craft, to stretch yourself. Not everything you try will work.
Right.
But what do you think about that, Jake?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think the great benefit of working in a creative environment is you can constantly try new things. And we have constantly tried new things in the way that we work. And what we were discussing about before lunch, wasn't it, was about how can we find a way to be more efficient. It was born out of a question of efficiency. How can we as a partnership be more efficient? I think we've both had feelings this year kind of going, could we have done a little bit more? Right. Could we have created more material? I don't like to use the word churn out because it kind of feels like it's just cheap, like, just knocking out scripts.
Could be more prolific.
But yes, how can we be more prolific? So for those of you who aren't familiar with the way that Ben and I work, we are doing it for you live. Right. Yeah. But the way we work is we come up with ideas together. We workshop them together. That means kind of talk around them, settle on something. Once we've settled on something, then we continue to build that out. Then we will write an outline together. And that, of course, is where we are in the process. What do we normally do after that, Ben?
After that, we would kind of break that outline up into usually about 3-page sections, but we do it more on story than pages. So it's like short sequences. And then we would go away and you would write a sequence, and I would write a sequence, and then we would send those pages to the other person, allowing that person to then rewrite those sequences in whatever fashion they want. And then we would, after that, come together, combine those sequences into the pages as they are, and then we would continue to polish them so that we could kind of create a singular voice after that work. And
by the time we've written that kind of first draft, we've almost done kind of 3 drafts on it, because I've done a pass on it, Ben's done a pass on it, and then we've done a combined pass on it together. And our question was, what are each of our strengths? Right. And I think we have different strengths. And I think it's absolutely right. It's not to say that one is better than the other. They're just different. I am far more the kind of greyhound who's chomping at the bit, eager to get out and just get something out on the page. And Ben is more, I would say, considered. He pauses and thinks about things perhaps more than I do. And perhaps takes a little bit more time with it. But ultimately, and we were talking about this earlier, is the adage is true that you always say about writing, that I think 80 to 90% of writing is rewriting. And yet you can only rewrite what you've written.
Correct.
So one of the things that we discussed was, how can we make best use of my eager to type words like Jim Carrey at the typewriter, and how then you can use your skills of and I think what you said earlier was correct, which was that I think one of your great strengths lies in rewriting that, which again, it's not to say you don't do great first draft stuff. I think you do great first draft stuff. Absolutely. And also sometimes that takes a little longer. And that's,
it's more about efficiency than quality. That we're not talking about who's better at each.
Totally.
We're talking about who's more efficient in order to be prolific. There's a specific goal.
Yeah.
Right. We live in a world right now, Hollywood, of selling scripts that are fully packaged and ready to go. That takes an enormous amount of time. We are out with a script right now that we started the new process. It's an old project that actually was sold way back when, but we started the new process about a year ago.
Yeah.
And it has only just gone out to market now. And that didn't even require a first draft because we already had the first draft.
Right.
We have another project that it's been 2 years. We have a TV project that's been over a year. So, I think that in order to stay in the game, in order to stay on top of your career, you have to have lots of things going at the same time because they're all going to be at different stages. You're going to be packaging one thing, you're going to be going out to town with the other thing, you're going to be rewriting another thing. And the only way to do that, if you're trying to do original material, is to have lots of original material.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Absolutely right. So I think it's about how we can, like in an ideal world, I think we'd write 4 or 5 scripts a year.
Oh, God, yeah.
Wouldn't it be amazing to, at the end of a year, have 4 new spec scripts? And it's,
Yeah, I would be very happy with 3.
I'd be very happy with 3.
That's only because we like to vacation. If we were writing all 12 months, then I think 4 would be reasonable.
Yeah.
But you and I like to and you have to.
We have to. We have families.
Otherwise, you can't just work the whole every day of the year. Like, I'm sorry, but you need to have life in order to fill your creative life.
It's very important.
Live in order to be creative. I truly do believe that.
I'm a believer in that too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't live to work, or I don't work to live. Hang on, wait, what is it? What I'm trying to say?
You don't work to live.
Yes.
You live and you work.
Oh, you know what I'm trying to say. I just want to work all the time.
Yes. No. Point is, but yes. So the idea of the topic being trying new things and taking risks is that we literally this morning were talking about trying a completely new way of working, which we've never done before, and is kind of scary actually. And it involves Jake taking the lead with the initial first pages because he's got that kind of real, like, I'm going to bust this out attitude, and me then going and doing the rewriting of looking at those initial pages and going, okay, yes, this is all on the page now. Can I see it for what it is and do that next draft?
Yeah.
And then once a whole draft is done, coming back and polishing it together. So we still have 3 drafts at the end, to be clear. And I think that always makes our first drafts extremely strong.
Yes.
But this is a bit of a new approach. I've never done this before. I've never just rewritten pages and not been the first writer on those pages. I mean, it's weird because I guess technically I do half of it when we swap back and forth.
That's right.
But I do still feel like half of it I am writing the first. So it's not like that process. But I think it's a good test. Look, this whole thing, this podcast is us trying something new.
Totally.
And taking a risk and going, who knows what the heck's going to happen with this spec script?
I know.
Is it going to be good? And is it going to be bad?
Might. I mean, it genuinely might be awful.
It might be awful.
We might be very publicly crashing and burning, but also I do think there's benefit in that to show people that sometimes that's what happens, and and that even at a professional level, that happens.
I'm sorry. Even the very, very, very best writers or very best directors or very best actors do not always do the best. They all shit the bed once in a while.
Totally. Absolutely.
But Leandro is being very nice and says it's going to be a great script. I believe it's going to be a great script.
Totally.
And I would approach it if I didn't.
I really like where we're going with it. So regardless, I'm having a lot of creative fun, a lot of creative joy in working on this thing. And ultimately, that's so much of what it's about too. Like, as a writer, and we've tried writing things that we don't like. And you can always tell. I feel like you can read something that someone's not really loved when they've written it too. Because you've got this is just. Wow.
But I think also, and you were saying, it's like that's also part of this topic. It's like Try it.
Yeah.
Take that risk. Maybe you will love it.
Yeah.
Maybe
you know what the motto of the Special Air Service, the SAS in the UK is?
No.
He who dares wins.
He who dares wins. There you go.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you've been trying to think, oh, should I write this particular type of way, or should I work this particular type of way? I've never done that before. I feel a little nervous. Should I write TV instead of feature? Should I write a feature instead of TV? Try it. Take the risk, because you just don't know until you've done it. So that's our little. I mean, technically, that's actually less than 15 minutes.
It did very well. You did very well. But I think it's about taking risks, and ultimately, one could say, you could extend that, couldn't you? And you could say, not only are you taking a risk or trying something new, but also how can you do that stylistically?
Right.
What are stylistic choices that you might make to go, oh, you know what? I would never normally.
We've done that.
We've absolutely done that. I mean, we did that with the early draft of The Princess. The first draft of The Princess, the early draft, the draft that went on sale was entirely told from her point of view.
She was new.
On every single page.
And we were like, this is a risk.
Yeah, and it was a risk.
This
and it
could totally not work.
Yes, and it was not the way that it was end up shot and made.
They changed it, but man, it made for a good read.
It did.
It made for a good read. The Princess was on every page.
Even when you were learning other information, you were all learning it from her point of view.
She was behind a wall. She was listening around a corner. She was looking down into the courtyard.
Totally.
It was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, totally.
And we did a lot of things in that script that we'd never done with action before. We were like, you know what? We want to write an 8-page long action sequence or whatever.
Totally. And here's the thing, like, you might go and see a movie and go, that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad they took the risk. There was a very big movie out a few years ago that I was like, this storytelling device did not work for me, but I appreciate what they were trying to do. You know?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So it does.
Yeah. I think it's important. And it also makes, if it's a creative risk, then I think it has the potential to make you stand out of the crowd.
Yeah.
And if it's a craft risk, then it has the potential for you to learn something new, whereby you go, wow, I can actually be a better writer, or a more prolific writer, or, a more collaborative writer.
Yeah. It was interesting to talk to Dave the other day about how we might have several scripts on the go at any one time. We did an interview the other day with our friend.
Dave go back and watch that. It's great.
Yeah, it's excellent. But he was saying he might get stuck on one script and go, I'm just going to put that down for the afternoon and work on something else. And you go, wow, I don't do that. But what if I did?
Right. I mean, it's a little easier, I guess, when you're working on your own. But in theory, we have other projects that we can work on. And we kind of do, but not usually multiple scripts.
Right.
We'll have a pitch that we can go to, or we'll have a
here. Although it's cold outside, my central heating is on. I'm getting all warm.